Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and today I am bringing you my Jane Austen July video recommendations. Yes, Jane Austen July is almost come to an end. At time of recording there's still about a week left and I feel like I spent the first 2 weeks of Jane Austen July frantically reading Jane Austen and Jane Austen related literature, and then I spent the last week going down the booktube rabbit hole and just watched a lot of Jane Austen related booktube content, some of which I am recommending to you today. There are lots of recommendations. If I count it right, I'm recommending 23 videos to you. So I have set a few rules for myself for this video. The first one is that I am only recommending one video per booktuber. Bear in mind that most of these booktubers that I'm recommending to you have done more than one Jane Austen related video, so I would really recommend that you check out the other videos other than the one that I'm talking about, because like I said, most of these have done some really fantastic booktube content this month. I've been so enjoying watching everyone's take on Jane Austen July. I've also split this video into sections, into recommendation categories, if you will. And because I know this is going to be quite a long video, I have included timestamps in the description box. So, for example, if you're only interested in vlogs, you can go into the description box, click the timestamps, that takes you to the vlog section, and then look at my recommendations for those. This goes without saying, but every single video that I'm talking about is linked in the description box, so go check out the description box, click on the videos you're interested in, watch them all if you're like me. There have been some real gems published on BookTube this month, and let's get into them. The first category of a video I want to talk about is book overviews and rankings. So there have been a few videos that take all of Jane Austen's work and rank them or talk about the books in a specific order, and I love these kinds of videos. I've done quite a few of those types of videos myself. One that I really enjoyed was by Rita J, Dashwood, and she did a video titled "Which Jane Austen Novel Should Be Your First?" And she is an expert in Jane Austen. She has a PhD in Jane Austen, so she knows what she's talking about. And she basically gives a little overview, like a little teaser for each Jane Austen novel, and kind of leaves it up to you which one you want to start with. So I really enjoyed that video, even though I have now read all of Jane Austen's novels. I enjoyed hearing her take on them. The second video I want to recommend in this category is by Jennifer Brooks, and she did a video titled Jane Austen's Novels Ranked from Worst to Best. I didn't 100% agree with her ranking. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've never seen a Jane Austen novel ranking that lines up with my own Jane Austen novel ranking 100%, but that's not the point. It's just fun to hear other people's opinions on these books. They're just so much fun to watch. And then the third video in a similar vein from Ben, who runs the booktube channel called Doomantidote, love that name. He did a video called A Jane Austen Noob Ranks Her Novels. So from what I understand, he's read every Jane Austen novel once, and he's just finished his read-through of Jane Austen's novels, and he gives his opinions on them in a really hilarious way. I enjoyed seeing his noob take on it. Go and check those out. Let's move on to the second category of video, which is book reviews. Obviously, a staple of the booktube community is people talking about specific books. And the first one of those went straight to my heart, really. This is Dario from Motley Reads, and he reviewed Emma. I was rooting for this guy the moment I saw his TBR video in which he said he'd never read a Jane Austen novel before, despite his wife being a massive Jane Austen fan. So Emma was the first ever Jane Austen novel he read, and he has some really good insights on it. I really enjoyed this review. It's incredibly deep and thoughtful, and a lot more deep and thoughtful than my own thoughts were after my first read through of Emma. He really picks up on a lot of details that I certainly missed first time I read the book. I am anticipating his review for Pride and Prejudice because I know that that's the next one that he picked up. Next up, we have a review of Mansfield Park by Kaylee from the channel Books for MK. and she reread Mansfield Park. I believe this was her first read, so similar to myself, I also reread Mansfield Park this month, and our thoughts are actually quite similar on the book. She saw it with new eyes as well. She got a lot more out of this read, and her review is very detailed, very thoughtful, very well structured. It's just a great book review. So go and check that out, especially if you too, like myself, read Mansfield Park twice with a completely different reading experience. The next video is a book review not of a Jane Austen book, but of a piece of secondary literature to Jane Austen, and that is Matilda from Tilly's Shelf. She did a review of the BookTube favourite, What Matters in Jane Austen, by John Mullan. This is a book that I'm sure you've seen recommended over and over again on BookTube. I have. I picked it up this month, I read it, and Tilly has some really interesting thoughts on it. She talks about the positives, and then she also talks about the details that she wished he had included in this book. Because while this is a really fantastic book, really interesting read, there are some things that I picked up on that I wish he'd included as well. So her video is kind of adding to the What Matters in Jane Austen book, if you will, and in a really good book review. Hannah from Hannah's Books did a review of a book called Jane Austen, Cocktails with Jane. Genius. Genius. Someone did a cocktail recipe book based on Jane Austen's novels. What's not to love? So Hannah talks about this book, and in her kind of usual thoughtful, measured and intelligent way, and she then also shows us some of the cocktails that she's made from that book. Delicious. Hamsavahini Vajraasthra, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, did a review of a modern Jane Austen retelling anthology called Austenistan, which is edited by Lalene Sukira. And this is an anthology of modern day Jane Austen retelling set in Pakistan. So that is a book that I hadn't heard talked about on BookTube at all, and she gives an overview of the stories and a review of that. Sounds like a really interesting read. She has kind of ambivalent thoughts about it. I think she enjoyed quite a lot of it, and then there were some other parts, as in any anthology, that she wasn't a huge fan of, but that's a good review as well. Check that out if you're interested in that anthology. Janelle from the channel Too Fond of Books reviewed a book series which I feel like I have heard about, at least it didn't sound completely new to me, which is the Mr. and Mrs. Darcy Mysteries, which is, as you can imagine, a historical detective series fiction based on Jane Austen's novels. She does a series called Mystery Through History, and this fit right into it, as well as being part of Jane Austen July. So she talks about those books. She's read most of them, I believe, and they sound kind of fun, even though I had given up on historical Jane Austen retellings. I might have to check those out as well. We move on to our next category, and this is low-key my favourite type of Jane Austen July video. My absolute favourite, and that is character discussions. I love videos in which people take either one character or a set of characters and analyse those characters. Marissa from Blatantly Bookish did an absolutely hilarious video called Mean Old Broads, Manipulative Older Women in Jane Austen. Admitted, Lady Catherine, Mrs. Norris, these kinds of characters are just some of our favourites in Jane Austen, and she takes them, she talks to them, she talks about what makes them so horrible, she talks about their motivations. Love that video. Next up we have Catherine from Taking Tea with Catherine, and she did a ranking of Jane Austen's leading men. I feel like this is a very controversial topic, you know, are you a Mr. Darcy or a Henry Tilney kind of person? Henry Tilney all the way, obviously, but it's a fun video. Go and watch it if you want to debate whether 10,000 a year is better than being a funny person. Katie from Books and Things has done, among many other lovely videos about Jane Austen, she did one about parents in Jane Austen, and this is a topic that I love to think about because every Jane Austen book has at least one really striking parent figure that really influences the plot, that's really present in a way. So Katie talks about the present parents, she talks about the absent parents, she talks about the parents that have passed away. She takes that topic of parents in Jane Austen, looks at it from pretty much every angle, and I learned a lot watching that video. Naomi from Naomi's Bookshelf did a fantastic discussion of Charlotte Lucas with the brilliant title, Why Charlotte Lucas Made the Right Choice. Yes, I have been saying that for ages. In fact, I was planning that exact same video, but then Naomi was a little bit quicker and she said everything I wanted to say about Charlotte Lucas, but she did it better. Really, really well rounded video. She talks about Charlotte obviously making the right choice in marriage, no spoilers here. But then she also brings in details from other Austen novels that kind of show alternatives for Charlotte's future and why they are not as good as the path that she chose. Another one of my favourite Jane Austen characters is Mrs. Elton from Emma, and Ross from Scallydandling About the Books did an amazing analysis of Mrs. E and how Jane Austen uses dialogue and description and other characters' opinions to create a character. This video teaches you so much about Jane Austen's writing craft, about her character building, and uses Mrs. Elton as an example for that. Absolutely fascinating video. Next up, we move on to the category of reading vlogs. Now, I have to admit, I'm not the biggest watcher of reading vlogs, but I do enjoy them in Jane Austen July. Does anyone else watch reading vlogs mostly while they're cooking? I feel like I have them a lot while I cook. Maybe it's just like the nice background music and the sort of relaxing book chatter and the delicious looking shots of breakfasts. Anyway, so I've got some reading vlogs I want to recommend to you, and the first one is by Nashwa S, in which she reads Pride and Prejudice for the first time. And I love watching people discover Jane Austen for the first time. Love it. And she talks about the book and obviously lots of other things, and there's some really interesting book discussion in there. Risha from the channel For the Love of Classics also did a vlog in which, among other things, she reads some Jane Austen. And again, great music, great aesthetics, great food, and great book chat. Petra Yu, I feel so targeted by this reading vlog because it bears the title Jane Austen and Kittens. Yes, that's how you get me to click on a video. Do I need to say more? Petra is an old hand at Jane Austen July. She is familiar with Jane Austen. She rereads Jane Austen. She goes and visits the most adorable fluffy kitten, and you need to watch that for those two things alone. And finally, a video by Arion and Prometheus from Book Zealots, which I put in the vlog category. It's not technically a vlog, but it's also not really a book review. Basically, they just sit down for a proper posh afternoon tea with scones and sandwiches and tea from a teapot and discuss various things they've been up to, including reading Emma, reading some other books like The Wheel of Time, and going jam shopping. We're getting to the penultimate category, which contains just two videos, both about Jane Austen herself. The first one is from Alexandra from the channel A Lovely Jaunt, and in her usual precise way, she did a video called A Brief Biography of Jane Austen, which is exactly that. Now, I'm not a huge fan of reading biographies. They don't really keep my attention all that much, so I enjoyed watching this video in which she references other biographies, of course, and just gives you an overview over Jane Austen's life. And then Kathy Grimm did a lot more personal kind of video about Jane Austen, which she called A Jane Austen July Adventure in Genealogy, How I'm Related to Jane Austen. Love this. Basically, she looks at her Ancestry.com profile and traces it back to Jane Austen herself. Well, Jane Austen's siblings, because obviously Jane Austen herself didn't have any children. So that's a fun little, completely different take on Jane Austen July that I really enjoyed. And the last category of videos that I want to talk about are adaptations. Well, no, not Not videos that are adaptations, that's also a thing, but videos that discuss adaptations. First one, we have Sabrina Johns ranking Jane Austen film adaptations. Really funny video. Again, our ranking is not the same. Will I ever find a video ranking that overlaps completely with mine? I hope not. But anyway, so in this one she discusses various Jane Austen film adaptations and what she likes and doesn't like about them. Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading did a video titled Jane Austen July Emma Fest with a Guest. Good rhyme in there. The guest, by the way, is Jason, who you might know from Old Blues Chapter and Verse booktube channel. And they watched all Emma adaptations. Basically, they went through different categories and discussed them, like which Emma adaptation has the best Miss Bates, etc. Really fun video. I've only seen like 2 of the adaptations they talk about, but I still found it incredibly entertaining. And then the final video I want to talk about is Sam Dawson, and he did a video called Austen and Chicklet, but mostly Bridget Jones. This is a super interesting video. I completely disagree with Sam in this video, but it was really fun seeing a different take on Bridget Jones. I'm not a huge fan of Bridget Jones, but he is, and he is quite passionate about it and explains what he loves about it, and that was very interesting to watch. Great video. Go check that out as well. Go check out all of these videos. They are all linked in the description box. This is by no means, by the way, a complete roundup of Jane Austen July content in any way. Like I said, there's still a week to go. A lot of these booktubers have done many videos about Jane Austen July, so check out the channels, have a little bit of a browse, check out the Jane Austen July hashtag, and since I'm sure that there is so many videos that I've missed out on, please recommend them in the comments as well. A note, as always, if you recommend a video, don't link to it because YouTube tends to flag that as spam and then I might not get to see it at all. Just give me the booktuber's name and the title of the video, and then we can all go and search for that video ourselves. This was almost it from me for this Jane Austen July as well. I hope you enjoyed the content that I've been putting out. I enjoyed making it, I enjoyed reading Jane Austen, I enjoyed watching Jane Austen booktube. I enjoyed looking at the Jane Austen July hashtag on Instagram. It's been really fun this year. The next video that you'll see from me is going to be a Jane Austen July reading wrap-up, and then that's it until next July, I'm afraid. Thank you for watching. Bye!